I'm Lisa Robinson, and this is Atlantic Confidential. Today we're off the record with Geoff Tate from Queensryche. Hi.
Hi, Lisa.
Nice to see you. So let me just get right to this. When Chris left the band, how did you stay together? I mean, how did you keep from not breaking up, basically? Because it must have been devastating, all that
Well, we went through a couple of months where we were definitely throwing some ideas around on what we could do. And it was, I sort of equated to a marriage breaking up. We'd been through a lot of years together and we're very close. I mean, my children's godparents are Chris and his wife. And the whole thing was really a shock to us. We weren't expecting it. He hadn't communicated his dissatisfaction with his life or his involvement with the band to us. So it was all out of the blue. It was very, very much a shock. So we were all taken aback and didn't quite know what to do. Chris was a real driving force within the band and had been for many years. And I think we all sort of felt like we really needed to take a few months and think about it. And so we did. We didn't talk for a couple months, and we were all just kind of wondering what to do. And my wife made the suggestion. She said, "Why don't you just have everybody over? We'll have dinner. We'll drink some wine. We'll all just kind of throw our cards on the table and see how everybody feels." So we did that. We had everybody over, and we all came to the conclusion after several bottles of wine that we wanted to still make music together. We'd invested a lot of time and energy and emotion into the band all these years, and we weren't ready to call it quits yet. So once we decided to keep going, we had to decide on how we wanted to do it. And Michael Wilton, our other guitar player, he really wanted to play with another guitar player. He didn't want to have the sole responsibility. So we needed to find another guy, and that's where Kelly came in, which was sort of a strange experience, how we met up with him, but he's worked out great. We're really happy to be making records again.
Let me just ask you this. So many bands say that they couldn't possibly go on if the original unit wasn't together. Then other bands have different situations where you've seen 2, 3 guys even leave the band and they still call it the same thing. Mm-hmm. Who do you feel is essential to Queensryche? I mean, clearly it couldn't have gone on without you. Do you feel the same way about all the other guys? I mean, Scott and Michael and Eddie, and do you feel like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. When Chris left, I didn't think the band was going to continue on. I couldn't see it go on. Yeah, he and I were very close. And he and I were sort of the driving force within the band, at least we thought, at the time. Right. But it's funny how you change the chemistry around, change the ingredients around, and something happens to it, where once there were, 2 followers in the band and a couple leaders. Now you have, a different group of people making decisions and kind of coming up and taking charge of certain areas, and that's really what's happened. So it'd be really hard for me to put my finger on who could leave and how that would affect the band, because I think it would change. Everything would change.
Also, do you feel that, how could you not know that he was unhappy if you were that close? And
that's the big mystery. I thought we were very close, and I felt really very betrayed in the fact that he hadn't consulted with me about his feelings about things. I went through a point at one time years ago where I didn't think I wanted to continue on with the band. And I talked, it was around Promised Land, I guess 93, 94. And I was just going through a real rough time in my life at that point, and I didn't think that I had anything that I could offer the band. I felt, I just had enough of the whole thing. The whole Empire success of that record really kind of messed me up a bit.
Why does that happen? Why does success, when you wait for it and you want it for so long and you strive towards it, and then when it happens, why does it make
Because it's not what it's all romanticized about being, and I don't think really success, financial success, that kind of thing is something that I really ever strived for. I think it was more of a having artistic success, doing a song that really touched somebody. That's always what I've always wanted to do.
But the more records you sell, the more people you're reaching and touching.
That's
so
true.
It goes with the territory.
I suppose it's the media. It's the whole thing where I remember once it was like I think we were at the Grammys and Billy Idol came up to me out of the blue. "Oh man, I just love your music," and hey, would you mind if my photographer took a picture of you and I together? And I didn't think of anything at the time. I said, well, sure, you know. So here we are taking our picture together, and the next thing I know, it's in a magazine, and it's all over the media that he and I are working together on a solo project and all this kind of thing. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, man, that's just a cheap shot, you know. And then there's a lot of...
Did he put that out there, you think? Okay.
I don't know.
You also had said something I read that where you said the jealousy that comes along with success can be,
yeah,
you know, tough to deal with.
It throws you...
experience a lot of that?
It throws you into a completely different economic bracket. Your life just changes, you know. I mean, you're moving in different circles of people. You're traveling. People that you had sort of relationships with, they feel different about you. They think you're being different, and you are different. You know, it changes you. It's hard to describe, really.
It changes you, or do you think that the people around you change because they can't deal with your circumstances?
I think it's both. It definitely changes the individual, though. Definitely. It opens your eyes to a lot of things, and it's what we ended up writing Promised Land about, you know, of working towards this goal all your life and finally getting there and realizing that, you know, it was sort of a worthless endeavor to put all your energy into getting someplace when really you were there all the time, but you didn't know it. And I suppose you could look at it, well, you wouldn't have ever known it unless you got there, so you can look back and recognize where you are now. But that's what we ended up writing the record about anyway. But getting back to your original question, I did feel betrayed about Chris leaving, and I think everybody in the band did, because we had made, you know, young teenage boy packs, you know, that we were going to be a band forever, you know, we were going to continue this on until we were old men, you know, and we were going to make music together, and he broke that oath, you know, so.
You see him now?
No.
No. Boy, bands are tough. It's really tough. You said it's like a marriage, but I think it's even more intense, because marriages, people tend to do their own things during the day or work, and then they have their family life at night or weekends or whatever. But when you're in a band and you're traveling and you're on the road and you're doing those 17-hour drives, I mean, you're with these guys all the time.
Yeah.
What has Kelly brought to the band now?
Oh, he's just brought a breath of fresh air. You know, he's a joy to be around. You know, he's a clown. He's a thinker. He's fast. He's quick. He's always coming up with ideas. He's an idea guy. And he just has an unorthodox way of doing things that's very refreshing. You know, Chris was always sort of a rigid, meticulous kind of person that, you know, was very good at what he did and an excellent songwriter. But he was just adamant about he wanted things done a certain way. And Kelly's more, yeah, let's try this, let's try that, let's try this. He's very undisciplined in certain areas, which is very refreshing, but very passionate about what he does. And he goes for a more emotional approach to things than Chris ever did. He always wants to affect somebody's emotions rather than their intellect, you know, and I really respect that. That's sort of what I've always been about as well. And so he brings all those elements in, plus his producing background. He's worked with so many bands, and he just brings in all those experiences with us. And it's nice. It's like, you know, a whole set of different ingredients to add to the meal, you know.
I know that he had done some production work. How come nobody ever asked him to be in a band before, or did they?
Oh, he's been in a number of different bands. He and I used to play in a band together, actually.
That was The Myth? Is
Myth,
that what it was called? Right,
yeah.
Was that a cover band?
No, we wrote original music. We had, I guess 20, 30 songs. Actually, some of those lyrics from those songs became Queensryche songs on our first couple of records. So, you know, our history goes way back. You know, I've known Kelly since he was 16 years old, you know.
But you were lucky to be able to get him now, because nobody...
Yeah, well, we stumbled into him. You know, I've always kept in contact with him, but I hadn't seen him in probably a year. And we were on tour with Here in the Now Frontier, and that was when Chris was in the band. And we had stopped by to do a radio broadcast. And Kelly was engineering the broadcast and producing this show. And we started talking, we had a couple of drinks, and the subject came around to the next record. And Chris was all over the idea of, you know, Kelly producing the next Queensryche record. And it sounded like a really good idea at the time. We all said, yeah, let's do it. And we made plans to start in the fall. And then we left and finished the tour, and then Chris quit the band. So we called Kelly up to say, hey, you know, we're not going to start the record. We've lost our guitar player. And anyway, it all ended up being on Kelly's shoulders, and he said, hey, well, let's see what happens. So we started writing songs together, and boom.
There's very few bands that don't go through some sort of trauma, whether it's losing a member one way or another, but to me, the whole thing with what happened with EMI and them closing down and what that must have done right in the middle of this tour and everything, too.
It was the beginning of
traumatic.
The tour. Yeah, it was awful. Yeah, it's one of those kind of years that you look back on, if you can make it through it, and you start laughing about all the...
that which does not kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a devastating year.
But you had so many fans. Why didn't you just still keep touring? Were there no records in the stores?
There were no records in the stores.
Tour support dried up? Or
everything just dried up. You really can't tour without a record company. And everything was in turmoil. We were looking at the sound scan sheets that came, and all our sales on everything was like 0, 0, 0. And this went on for like months. We weren't selling any records.
Radio wasn't playing the stuff?
Well, radio was playing the songs,
but kids couldn't go and find them.
Yeah, they couldn't find the record. None of the records were being stocked in the stores. It's like the whole arm of EMI that handles all this stuff just left one day and never came back. So we discussed it with our management, and they felt, and we all came to the conclusion that the best thing to do would be to finish our commitments with touring that we had, which was 10 weeks, and go back in, make another record, and get things rolling again with a different company.
This your old management?
Yeah.
This was Kid Rock. So everything's changed, hasn't it?
Everything's changed, yeah.
Is it exciting?
Yeah,
does it feel like a new adventure in a way?
It does. It's challenging because it's new personalities to get to know and to build relationships with. And so far it's really been great. Atlantic's been really great to work with, and our new management, Ray Daniels, is great to work with. So, yeah, it's all moving along smoothly.
You couldn't resist Q2K?
No, couldn't resist it.
But also, when you think about it, it is kind of a statement, isn't it? Not to be overly pompous about it, but it is the year 2000.
Yep.
It's a new beginning.
It's a new beginning.
It's a new beginning for you.
Right.
On every level, really.
Yeah.
Also, the record, I think, while it has, the trademark stuff, it seems to me like there's something a little more human going on in this. Maybe it's more of a groove thing, or the lyrics are a little more personal something. Was that conscious on your part, or are you aware of it? Do you feel that way about this record compared to the last one?
Well, in retrospect, yeah. At the time, no. This was really a magical experience making this record. And I don't know if it was because of the stress of the year or the situation or what, but this thing just came together. It was, once we plugged in and started playing together, Kelly brought in this idea of recording as we wrote. And so the whole record is very much a live record of us sitting in one room, a little bigger than this one, and just playing music and recording it as we go. And so all the lyrics are all stream of consciousness stuff that I didn't start out with a plan or an idea of what I wanted to say. It just all came out, and it was all influenced by the music that was coming through my head, And after putting it all together and listening back to it, I started recognizing that there were themes involved, and definitely themes revolving around relationships and how people interact with each other, which I think is a contemporary sort of idea and concept. It's nothing new, of course, but it's something that a lot of records have in common. And it's just our take on it, our spin on relationships.
Also, I need to ask you about Seattle. What was it like to have been living there, doing the music you were making from about, I would say, 1989, 1993, during that whole grunge hysteria, and with the A&R men coming there? What was that like for you? That's your town.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of interesting. Queensrÿche was part of the beginning of that scene.
Really?
When we got signed in '83,
Mother Love Bone, that kind of those bands.
Yeah, we were at the beginning of that, and the scene was so underground that it didn't even have clubs, that people could come see the music, or hear it. It was all done in private parties and renting halls and things like this, because none of the clubs in town would let us play, because we were all playing original music, and it was darker and it was heavier. And at the time, this is bands like Steve Miller were popular, and the Cars, real pop stuff, and that's all you could play in the clubs. Cover bands were playing that. So we were at the beginning of this scene where it was sort of like the dark underbelly of rock, you know, and we were very much influenced by the European rock at the time. And so all these bands, we all kind of grew up together. We're all around the same ages and stuff. We just happened to be one of the first that got signed out of the area. And once we got signed, it sort of took us in a whole different circle where we were touring away from Seattle. We were on a, big worldwide tours with different bands. And so basically Seattle got left behind for us, and we became more world-oriented. And but the scene back in Seattle just started, accumulating and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Finally, the clubs started opening up, and the club scene there got to a point where it supported the original music that was being made by these bands. And so finally, I guess it was back in maybe 92, I guess, when we finally finished off the Empire tour. That's when we really took time off to sit at home for a while, and we took a year off. And that's really, I think, probably the end of the grunge thing was just coming to a close there, or maybe it was the beginning or something. Right around the time.
It's sort of the middle, I think, because
Right around the
94
time.
was when Kurt Cobain killed himself,
Was it
right? So
94?
that was the end, I
Yeah,
would say.
okay.
That was the beginning of the real
Yeah,
end.
yeah.
But it was already ridiculous. It was already, Time magazine was writing about it. Whenever
Yeah.
that happens, it's over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But still,
It was interesting to watch because it really wasn't a phenomenon anywhere else but in the media.
I know.
You know,
I know.
and I found that to be so interesting that a group of people, which was very intelligent actually, they created this buzzword, attached it to something, and brought in all these different elements to form a scene out of it, and then sold the whole thing to the world, and everybody bought it. It's brilliant.
the thing is, when you listen to stuff, and you listen to your records, and even with this new one, to me, it's obvious that there are still singers who are influenced by stuff you did. I mean, as disparate as Chris Cornell.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Just vocally, just some of the vocal stuff. And I'm not sure that he would ever own up to that or admit it, or I don't know if you guys know each other, or I don't know if there's any connection.
We came
But
from
you
the same
from
backgrounds.
the same town and the same bands.
Yeah.
I mean, Led
We used to go to
Zeppelin,
the same
Black
parties
Sabbath.
and play the same music, and he was in a number of different bands that played these underground parties, with our band at the time. He's a couple years younger than me. I was kind of the old guy of all these. I'm like 3 or 4 years older than everybody in the scene.
But the thing is, you put out an indie EP in 1981. Now that was way before a lot of other people thought of any of that indie rock, alterna rock, grunge, any of that sort of trendy categorization that happens. That certainly Queensryche has transcended. It's like I also remember sitting with Jimmy Page in the beginning of the 70s. It was the same thing. People were putting them down for being a heavy metal band. And here we are, 30 years later, and that music is still there.
Yep.
So you must kind of laugh, or smile at least, when you see this stuff about rock is dead and then rock is back. I mean, how many times have you seen this go around now?
At least twice, and maybe
Yeah.
3 times.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. The longer you're in the business, the more you see the cycles of things, and the smarter you get on how to capitalize on those cycles and put yourself in the right position at the right time. Yeah.
What do you think about some of the rock bands that are coming up now?
Oh, there's some good rock bands coming out now. I hear it's always funny when you hear a new band. You can always hear their influences right off the bat on their first record. And it usually takes 3 records, I think, for most bands to really become what it is they're going to be. And so the first couple of records, I always sort of, I listen to them, and then I think, okay, well, let's see what they go. And their third record, that's the one. But you're saying about the rock is dead slogan. It was kind of interesting because I hear that all the time, from the media. But
No, now they're saying rock is back.
yeah, now they're saying rock is back. Yeah, and it's always funny because after every one of our shows, we have a very large meet and greet for our fan club, where we meet between 150 and 200 people a night, and they don't think rock is dead, and they look you in the eye, and there's tears rolling down their face, and they say, that song on such and such a record that you wrote, that got me through a really difficult point in my life, and without that, I don't think I'd be here shaking your hand right now. Thank you so much. And you feel that conviction, and you read that slogan on the magazine that says rock is dead, and no. Music is music, and whatever you want to categorize it as being doesn't really matter, it's communication between people, and that's what the bottom line is for me. That's what's important, is people communicating their ideas. That's how culture gets to where it's going. It raises ideas and ideals for people to grab onto and relate to, and it makes us better people. And that's what art is all about. It's people's expression, and there's a good reason why it's celebrated.
One more thing, your fans are intense, aren't they?
I think so.
And you really do get to meet them after shows
every
and
night,
stuff like
yeah.
that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, one thing I forgot. You did some amazing videos. I mean, there was a period there where there was some unbelievably groundbreaking videos, weren't there? I mean, was that something you participated in, or was that just mostly Matt? Or, I mean...
Well, we worked with some really good people at that time that were, they were really great at what they did in their field, and we recognized their talent, and we said, oh, we want these people, and you work with good people, and then you get good things, and it was really an enjoyable experience to work with Matt and some of the other guys we worked with. Now I'm blanking on the guy's name, but the guy that did Kevin Godley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we worked with him on one video, and boy, that was great.
And that's the one I remember, though, that lighting.
Yeah.
I mean, those were
Well, he was really
amazing.
good at that. It
Awesome.
was his thing, that he did, and
Right.
He's been copied a lot,
Yeah, I'll say. One more thing, too. I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask you, when you start out as a band, you play live in a room when you're making a record, right? And then you go through this whole experience where you start breaking it down and you record differently. It becomes much more complicated, and you record each instrument at a time, and then there's all the overdubs and all of that. This time, you went back into a room and played live?
Yeah.
Isn't it funny how that comes around?
It does come around, yeah. And there's something very magical about that, the energy that is created with people playing music together. And Kelly brought that back in. He took me out one day to this, we were out, I don't know what we were doing, but we ended up at this festival that was going on where people were drumming, and they had all these different drums that you could just pick up and start beating on, and he goes, come on, let's try this. We were drumming these drums, and with all these people we didn't know, but there was this sort of connection that starts happening because you lock into the rhythm and you start, going off each other and feeding off each other and doing different things, and there's lots of eye contact and everything, and he goes, isn't this great? We walked away there, got a coffee, and he says, that's the way I want to make the record, where we all sit in one room, we're looking at each other in the eye, and we take it someplace other than where it starts. And I said, I'm with you.
How do you remember the parts to play them live in concert?
We look at each other a lot.
I have to go back and listen to the record again. Yeah. Thanks a lot, really.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
This is Lisa Robinson. I've been talking with Geoff Tate from Queensryche on Atlanta Confidential, Off the Record. Thanks. Bye.